Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ken Ebie. I am Executive Vice President of Tomorrow.City and founder and principal of Ebie Strategies. Very happy to have you here for an important conversation with two remarkable tech leaders and who are bridging the gap and making connections between technology and government. So really excited to have you. We don't have all that much time, as you know, so let's just jump right in. Phaedra. It's great to have you here at Tomorrow.City.
Thank you for having me.
Really excited about the work you're doing with Promise, and we understand the work that you're doing. It's Promise, if I could just summarize it, it's a highly effective technology platform that leverages constituent data to help governments run their programs more effectively. So can you tell the audience a bit about the problem that you've identified and how artificial intelligence is helping you solve this problem for government?
Yeah, fundamentally, I think the important thing about Promise is that we believe that government can and should work effectively. And I don't know if you all know, but government has a lot of data. And so the real opportunity for Promise is how do you structure and organize that data to be able to run the most effective programs in the country. And so I'll use an example here in the state of Florida, because it's always really easy to think about that. In the state of Florida, we work with the state to help run the LIHEAP program, which is an energy efficiency program. If you were to apply for LIHEAP in a different state, you would go into a community action agency, you would bring a copy of your utility bill, you would have to prove your income, you would turn that into some type of like Salesforce CRM, you would wait, and then they would use that information and to determine eligibility. If you apply in the state of Florida, we've already integrated and already have your utility information, so we know how much you owe, we know your account number. We've already integrated with things like food stamp programs, so we already know your information. We can use data matching to determine household to household. And then we can actually use an agent to determine that you qualify. So something that used to take weeks, that requires multiple parts of data, that's expensive to run, can now be run cheaper, better, both for the government, it's a higher quality of data, and it's a better experience and a better service. And so ultimately what Promise is how do you build the government that we believe people deserve?
Very important work, and I think everybody here is aligned with trying to figure that out. Turning to you, John Paul, you're a government person. At least when I got to know you, you were a government guy. But you were recently named the head of global public sector for Stripe. So we know it as a payment processing platform that's really historically associated with the private sector. But you recently joined Stripe to help build a bridge, right, to government. And so my question to you is, can you just share a little bit with the audience about how Stripe is trying to solve within government the same types of issues and how you're utilizing AI to accomplish this objective?
Thanks, Ken. It's great to be here, everybody. There was a saying that we like to quote back when I was working in the White House, and it was something that Bill Joy, who was a co-founder of Sun Microsystems, had said just in a meeting one time, kind of offhandedly. He said, remember, most of the smartest people work for somebody else. Most of the smartest people work for somebody else. And that's true no matter what kind of organization you're in. It's true if you're in the US government. It's true if you're at Stripe. It's true if you're at Promise. It's true for any of us. And so the best thing we can do is figure out how do we collaborate better. I'm really proud of the work I did in government, both at the federal and local levels, to build capacity to solve problems, to bring in new technologies, new skills into government. But I still recognize that no matter how much you do and how successful you are inside of government, you've got to be able to tap into the expertise that's outside. And so at Stripe, that's what I'm doing. Stripe, for those who don't know, it's a payment processing company at its core, but it also does so much more in fraud detection, identity verification, et cetera. It really automates a bunch of the experiences of how money moves. And we processed $1.9 trillion last year. We work in 50 different countries. But almost all of the organizations that have benefited from Stripe have been private sector organizations. Some nonprofits, a few governments here or there, but they've really had to fight through a bunch of red tape to make it work. And now we're actually intentionally reaching out to universities, to governments at all levels, to transit authorities and more, to say, let's understand your needs better and make sure that we're serving them, because these products work for everybody. I also think the point that Phaedra brought up is really important, which is it's not just about, I hesitate to call it intelligence, but it's not just about the answers, the solutions, the data that you can get from people now. It's also from agents. And we're thinking really deeply about what's the machine readable layer that needs to exist in everything that we do, in every product that we create, because the world is moving toward agents, and we need to make sure that governments are able to keep pace with people's changing expectations by ensuring that they too can benefit from the changes that are coming.
Can I just say one thing that I think is important to note about both agentic workflows and about how we think about AI? The thing that I always get nervous about is when I see someone working with two young dudes in an apartment. And they're like, I just had this amazing product. And I worry about things like security, stability, audit trail, being able to make sure that you have information. So I think the challenge for government is how do you recognize the innovation, the opportunity with this incredible amount, but how do you do it in a secure and stable environment? We were talking to a state, and one of them was mentioning their governor was using a product, and I was like, immediately stop that person from using that product. And so figuring out how do you take the best of what AI has to offer with security and stability and an audit trail will really be important for the future.
It's a wonderful point, and I know that Promise has been taking that particular question very seriously and has been a trusted partner to a number of state and local governments. Can you tell us, Phaedra, a little bit about some of your kind of the use cases that that demonstrate the valued partnership between a thoughtful tech company and governments that are looking to protect data of constituents, but also looking to work more efficiently, more effectively?
Yes, maybe I'll use, thank you for the question, and I'll maybe use an example where we're working with the state of Mississippi. And the state, for many folks, people may or may not be aware that there's new requirements, HR 1, around what people need to report to receive some social benefits. And it is incredibly difficult for many states to be able to implement. One thing about us that's been really important is we have what's called a forward deployment engineering team, which is a team who can go sit in someone's office and be able to make sure that they can execute and implement technology. So in the state of Mississippi, we were able to go from concept to people using product in 6 weeks. And we're able to do that with a legacy health and social system. And so part of what was critical, and now 70% of people are participating through text messaging, and their error rate for food stamps has gone down 2 percentage points. And so, and all in a very quick amount of time. So being able to figure out what's the real problem you're trying to solve for, and part of what we learned in the state of Mississippi is it is exposure to information, realizing that the numbers have changed, access to information. We created a subscription service so that we can grab income every month if someone wants it, instead of having to self-report it all the time. And so really thinking about what are all of the things that you think about in the private sector, which is like, how do I apply for a credit card? Could you imagine if you applied for a credit card and someone said, you know what? You should come in our office to apply for that credit card. You should bring a copy of your taxes to apply for that credit card. We want to meet you. We're going to verify your citizenship to apply for a credit card, even though we just saw you last week in the same office. And so all of what we think about is how do we help a state run as effectively, as efficiently as possible, because most of these states are bigger than most of the Fortune 500 companies.
That's right, and impact a lot more lives. So this is a question for both of you. We talked a little bit, getting ready for this panel, about the push and pull and the two competing narratives that if someone were to draw a cartoon of the tech industry or a cartoon of government, one would be of a fast, agile, maybe breaking things to build them, not as careful, not as thoughtful sometimes, but focused on efficiency, and they would call that techie, right? They'd build, write another one that they would draw up, and it would be a slow, kind of stodgy, conservative, kind of fearful of what's around the corner, not terribly efficient, focused on process, protocol, and they would call that Gov Guy. Tell us a little bit from your perspectives, what is going to be required to make this marriage, which is essential for the future of government and constituent services, one that actually works and that kind of breaks down those two notions of what really should be counterparts working together for people and our well-being?
The first thing I'd say is I don't think that the stereotypes are helpful to anybody. And I think there are too many people in the private sector who have stereotypical ideas about what people in government are like or doing, and they're often wrong. And similarly, a lot of folks in government have these stereotypical ideas of what people in the private sector are doing or what their motives are, and those are often wrong too. So I think it really helps for us to open up dialogue, have conversations, and have people who actually experience life in both places. So if you have a chance to go work in another sector, I highly encourage it at some point in your career. When I was in New York City, we developed the New York City Internet Master Plan. We did this about a year before ChatGPT broke through and LLMs became really front of mind. And in this process, we got to review a bunch of the ways that AI was already being used in New York City government. Some of those were ways that it made it better. Here's an example. The Department of Citywide Administrative Services, DCAS, manages all the buildings. I think there are 15,000 energy bills that they have to pay every month. And their process had been that people, human beings, would go through spreadsheets with 15,000 lines of monthly billing and look for anomalies and look for something that didn't look right. And occasionally they would catch one. And that was their job. That was what they did for at least several days per month. But then they said, we can apply technology to this problem. You save, I think it was 3 people's time. You immediately reduce your error rate. So now the city is saving $5 million a year because of this simple intervention. Now that's something that didn't have to happen, but it made government work better. Now there are things that have to happen. And here I point to NYC Cyber Command. An incredible leader named Jeff Brown was our chief information security officer with me and partnered with Google to develop machine learning models custom to the needs of New York City's web interface, where I believe the number was 11 billion interactions per year. And so no amount of human beings can track that. Doesn't matter if you say work harder, if you hire 100, 200, 300 more people, you can't do it. So if the bad guys are using AI, the good guys need to have these tools as well. So I think as we think about what's the role for AI in government, we've got to think about where is it helpful and where is it necessary. And we've got to make sure that as we're doing that, we understand what's feasible for private sector partners to do. Sometimes governments ask for the moon. They ask for absolutely everything. It's kind of belt, suspenders, whatever else would hold up pants. They just like want to layer on all these different measures, and that might not be economical. It might not be actually a good business decision. And so you either end up with taxpayers paying way too much, or you end up with situations where legacy vendors who made these investments a long time ago basically can ride on the tails of those investments they made, and it builds a moat that locks out new players who might have better solutions that are fundamentally more suited to the work that government needs to do. So I would just encourage everybody to think about, as you're trying to identify where we make government better, where we have to change just to keep up and do the work of government, how do you ensure that you're open enough, that you're thinking about how you create a competitive marketplace and how you ensure that newer companies, those with some perhaps breakthrough solutions, have the ability to compete for them?
I so appreciate the question and the thoughtful answer. I probably do think that the stereotype is somewhat right. And the reason is because government when we deal with people, they're both concerned. No one wants to be on the front of a newspaper that they've made a strategic mistake by moving too quickly. And so you often pick the safest, the person that you've worked with before, because there's a saying, no one gets fired by using whoever that company is in the state you work for. So it feels safe. I think I get that,
safe.
right? I understand that. And when your choice is to hire 2 dudes in an apartment, we see some of these like startups where they expose data onto the internet, where I think we are right to think that government should be cautious, that it should be thoughtful. I think the thing that we should not sacrifice is quality. And sometimes what we do is we separate strategy and technology, which we often see as a result of government. Is you hire someone to do strategy, you hire someone else to do technology. That's probably the wrong way to run it, is to have strategy separated from technology. So I think the reality is, as someone who runs a technology company, the best advice someone gave me is don't be afraid to break things. So we should just acknowledge that all of those things are true. The question is, how do you build technology that is quick, that is safe, that is reliable, and that is stable. And so it needs to include things like forward deployed engineers who sit in an office. It needs to include people who have security experience. It needs to include some type of response from customers. How do you measure what the experience is of folks? It needs to involve an iterative process. So I just think in the Defense Department, people assume, you don't think the United States, the government, is going to build its own autonomous plane. The assumption is that you will go to the private sector for what it is best at. We have an obligation to say to government, where are the places that technology is at its best? How do we use those companies to be able to achieve the mission of what we believe is possible with this country? And I think that's for us at Promise is where we hope to serve is to be able to be safe, stable, secure, but to have world-class technology. And it makes me nervous that we don't think that people who come to government, that the best we can offer them is a website that looks like, it doesn't even look like what my child, because she will use Canva and build something better herself. But we should want more for this country than what we have. And that is our hope.
That is a wonderful point. And I'm going to ask one more question, which I think I can say that three of us have something in common in that we have had significant experience in various sectors, right? And so we bring a certain level of experience and some wisdom from these different parts of our professional and personal lives. And we understand that there's an importance in marrying technology and government in order to more effectively deliver on the purpose, on the promise of government. Some might say working more efficiently, delivering services more effectively, but I do think, and Phaedra, we spoke about this, a through line in your very kind of robust and rich professional career is the notion of human dignity, right? And the fact that a technology company can actually help deliver that, right? So in closing, I just wanted to ask, on top of the general goals of government, which is to take care of people and provide services, how does AI, as used through government, help us reach that ideal state in which governments are able to provide that additional element that's not on the balance sheet, which is to provide all constituents under the jurisdiction of the local or state government or the federal government with that basic element of human dignity? We'll start with John Paul.
At the end of the day, everyone's got to keep in mind their mission. What are they here to do? And I think the wonderful about governments is that it's usually pretty front and center. In companies, it can get a little bit lost sometimes. It's important for all of us, no matter where we are, focus on the mission. And I think if you're doing that, you're probably going to center people's dignity at the end of the day with whatever you're doing. The role of AI is to help improve that, to make it more personalized, to make your organization more efficient at delivering on whatever that mission might be. And some people sometimes ask me what's after AI, and the answer I give is more AI, actually. Just like every company became a tech company, a computer company, well, AI is just a new way of creating software that is, in many cases, better than the ways we had before. And so if you're in the private sector, the competitive pressures will force you to adopt in hopefully intelligent ways. If you're in the public sector, it's going to be your constituents and their rising expectations. And so I think if you're really thinking about your mission, centering dignity, you're going to be thoughtful about how to incorporate AI appropriately.
We are living through the rebuilding of a society, whether we know it or not. AI is fundamentally going to transform the way we live, the way we work. And if we do not center how we want this society to operate at the core of the way we build AI, we will regret it. And what scares me the most about the lack of innovation outside of the defense sector in AI is that we are going to build a society that relies on the models and the rules of folks that we would have not elected to be the leaders of our society. And so as I think about what centering human dignity means and centering the growth of this country is, I think we're at a moment of crisis, whether through technology or the way that people are living, the lack of resources. I think people are scared. Is like, if we don't think of AI as a way to solve the inherent inequities in society and the things that we believe and hope for this country and the dignity of people, then we will fail as a society. And when you look at kind of in key points in history where societies have had an opportunity, we like check every box. And if you look at places like Singapore, who went through emergence as a country, if you look at places where they have succeeded, is they embrace innovation, they embrace technology, but they do it in a way that serves a larger society. And so to me, the question will be for us is how do we, as quickly as possible, recognize that it is coming and design it in a way that prepares us for the future that we believe our children deserve. And that, I think, is what we have a kind of common responsibility, because the robots are coming. And the real question is, what should the robot system be operating on? And my hope is that we'll design it with government at the center, because those are the people who think about the needs of our greater society.
Wonderful. Well, I can say I speak for everyone in the audience to say that I'm very excited, and I feel a sense of comfort that the two of you leaders are at the forefront of this important conversation. And that's what Tomorrow.City is all about, having these conversations, taking them back, and making sure that we act on them to make sure that we are in a much better place as a society tomorrow. So everyone, let's say thank you, Phaedra and John Paul Farmer.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.